Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you some T205 Gold Border tobacco baseball cards from my collection. I hope you enjoy. As some of you may know, I'm more of a T206 collector than a T205. But you honestly, can't help to add a few of these to your collection. When I do add some, I tend to add PSA 4 or SGC 50 graded cards. I'm not too crazy about these cards in their raw condition and lower grades, and I only have one in the lower grade only because of the player in the on the front of the card and the advertisement on the back. These cards are similar to T206s, where they have different front-back combinations on some and not on others. Large assortment of advertisement backs, and different color inks and factory numbers also. One thing that's different with these, they don't have subject numbers. These were only printed in 1911, so it was just a single year, whereas the T206s were printed in 3 different subjects over a 3-year period. The other nice thing about these cards is the backs of them show different stats and a little bit of information on the player, which is also nice. Something that the T206s doesn't do at all. Yeah, other than that, let's take a look at what we got. So if I get the right angle here without a glare, you can see there's a goldish border. Some of these are very gold looking metallic. Those tend to be the nicer cards to pick up. On this camera that I'm using, unfortunately, you can't see too much of the goldish type border. These cards here are, very difficult in higher grades because of the gold border. The gold border tends to flake off, and it just leaves a whitish paper on the edges, and that can cause the grade to go down quickly. So that's something to keep into consideration when collecting these cards. These are also cards that are they just look a lot better when they're perfectly centered. So there are collectors out there that will only buy these cards perfectly centered, and stay away from anything that's just a little bit off. So as I said, these are PSA 4's. A majority of them that I have are PSA 4. It's just a nice, average, good-looking grade. I stay away from the lower ones just because they really do show their age. Something about the T206s, it's just, because it has the whitish border, it's just not as noticeable, how bad the card is beat up. Card backs, same thing like T206. A lot of the brands carry over to this set, Cycle being one of them. Little less common back on these cards. And like I said, you got some stats on there, some basic stats compared to nowadays on cards. Their full name on the top, and a little description of their playing career at that time period. So definitely pick up some of these. If you're only into T206, you should still have a couple of these in your collection. If T206 is a little over, over your limit, as far as, a possibility, this is considered like a sister set to the T206. There's nothing wrong with collecting these cards. It's a very popular set. The only reason why I don't have a ton of these cards is, the T206 set keeps me very busy. And to try to collect both is just going after, you know, two different difficult projects. So, you know, I tend to stick to the one, and, you know, pick up a PSA 4 here and there on these cards. So here's another one. Sometimes the gold border will oxidize a bit and actually turn a greenish color. So sometimes you might see a listing for a green border T205, and that's all it is. It's just that metallic gold ink that was used is oxidized, kind of like a copper penny. Turning greenish, you know, if left in water or in a moist environment. Another PSA 4. This card has a variation, different teams, so that's something interesting with this. And I think also this card may have a variation on the color of the signature. I think I'm not 100% sure. I don't have any notes in front of me. Just kind of doing this off the fly, but I believe this one has a blue signature variation, and this one is the American Beauty cigarettes back, another carryover brand from the T206 set. These American Beauty backs actually come in two different colors. One's in a black ink, one's in a green. Probably equally difficult. I wouldn't say one is more rare than the other. And the American Beauty cards, just like the T206s, they're a little more narrow than the rest of the cards. So if you see one that just looks a little bit shorter left to right, there's a pretty good chance it's still an untrimmed card. There's some, theories on why this was like that. One of them is that the cigarette packs were not as wide as the other ones, so they had to, trim these cards down to make them fit. I'm not really sure, that theory, the thing that keeps popping into my head when I think about that is, was the size of the sheet layout different just for American Beauty cards, just because they had narrower borders, or did they really have to take the time to slice off of a very thin amount of paper, off of each side of the card, and still try to manage to center the the card in the final process? Not really sure, and I don't think anybody really knows for sure. Joe Tinker, Hall of Famer. Again, this set I believe has 30 different Hall of Famers. All these Hall of Famers in the T205 set are also in the T206 set. There are players and Hall of Famers in the T206 that are not in the T205, so that's something to take into thought when making a decision of which one you want to collect. There may be certain players that are not in this set, but at the same time that also makes the set less expensive. So Joe Tinker PSA 4. And this one here is a Piedmont back with a factory 42. The factory 42s, just like on the T206s, a little more difficult. Probably not as difficult on the T205s, but it may just be a popularity thing. They could be just as difficult. I tend to try to pick up factory 42s over a factory 25 anytime I can, if the price is right. And this just happens to be a nice combination, Hall of Fame player with the 42 on the back. Alright, there's another one. Like I said, this one here, it's a little off center, and as you can see, it just, it kind of throws off the card a bit. That's why a lot of collectors will try to get these 100% centered, you know, if they're searching and they're not in a real big rush to build the set. Me personally, I just, you know, I pick them up every once in a while if I can find them at the right price. I try not to, you know, overspend on anything I buy. This one here, also Factory 42, you can see on the bottom. See if I can get that a little closer there. Factory 42, North Carolina district. And yeah, it's overall nice cards. You know, for a while there I thought I was going to collect T206s and T205s, but it was just too much. Another card here, as you can see on this top border. You know, it's got that flaking I had mentioned earlier. And, you know, that drops the grade, you know, but this one luckily was still a PSA 4. But a lot of collectors will stay away from something like this, even in a PSA 4 grade. Plus, it's off center, so it's something that, you know, you may not want. One thing about this card is you can see more of the metallic in the gold. So, you know, that can also play a role in, you know, deciding what cards you purchase and which ones you stay away from. You know, if you can put together a nice collection of these where the borders are all nice golden looking and metallic looking, you know, that would be, you know, nice looking set. This one, American Beauty, with the black ink. These were Factory 42. Both of the American Beauties in this set were Factory 42. No variations on that particular back. I got a Tony Smith, PSA 4. Now this is the American Beauty greenback. Like I said, there's not really any more difficulty between one and the other. You know, as a personal preference, I prefer the greenback just because it just has a nicer look to it. Kind of reminds me of the Sovereign green from the T206 set. Let's see, we got Curb White. This card here is actually a little more of a difficult card in the set. There are some cards that are short printed. This happens to be one of them. This is a nice card because it's got that nice gold border, metallic gold. You know, there's a difference between a, you know, what I would call a gold border and a metallic gold border. You know, one that really has that glitter to it, you know, makes a big difference in, you know, the way it's gonna look, you know, in your collection. This one is a Piedmont Factory 42, which is a more difficult front-back combination for this particular card. Got Owen Wilson, PSA 4. Somewhat metallic borders, not too bad. Back is off center pretty bad, but I picked this one up because it's a Piedmont Factory 42. Yeah, got a Hall of Famer here. Pretty centered, not too bad. But you know, the borders just don't have that metallic pop to them like some of the other cards. And you know, if you're really spending a lot of time on building a set like this, I would you know, tend to look for the more metallic borders than the non-metallic, just because they're going to look so much better when you're presenting the set. And another Piedmont Factory 42. Just like you know, with my T206s, you know, some of these T205s that I buy, you know, tend to stay away from the real common backs, you know, unless the price is just, you know, incredible, and you know, you're not going to pass up a good deal even if it's a common back. This here is a Cycle cigarettes back, a little more difficult. This back here is probably in line with the American Beauty as far as difficulty, in my opinion, for the T205s. T206, it's a little more difficult to decide which one is more difficult and which one is least, just because you have subject numbers. And on the American Beauty, on the T206s, you have a 350 subject, one with a frame and one without a frame around it. And then the cycles, you have 350 and 460, and it just throws them all over the place, and in a list of rarities. So with the T205s, you get one cycle back to worry about, and that's about it. Alright, Otis Crandall. This one has a couple variations. This one here, T not crossed the name. If you look at his first name there, the second letter there is supposed to be a T, but it doesn't have the line going across it. There are other cards that do have it. So this set does have some variations, which makes it fun, and you don't have to necessarily collect all those variations to say you have a complete set. Complete set number is it's just a matter of opinion, what you want to consider as part of the set. You can find people that say there's 208 cards in a set, 209. Some say 220, 221. It's all over the place. Me being, not as much of an expert on T205s, I really don't have an opinion as far as how many cards I consider as a complete set. As far as a T206 set, it's 524 for the base set. Even though one of them is a Hannes Wagner, I still consider that as part of the set. There's another back here. This variation of back came with different factory numbers, different color ink. So you'll find some with factory 25s, factory 42s, some with black ink, some with red ink. So it's still a fun set to collect. If you want to be a front back collector, but the T206 is just a little too much for you. This is a fun set to collect also. Alright, we got Danny Murphy. Again, little off center. Most people would stay away from. This back here is one of the more common backs. It comes in a factory 649, factory 30, and I'm not sure if there was another factory. I would have to look, but this one is a 649, and it's actually in one of the older PSA cases. This card is another type of a variation. The initial A on the back of the card on some of them were either there or not there. So if you're collecting variations, that's going to make a difference to you. This here is a Piedmont Factory 25. Alright, New York Highlanders, otherwise known as the Yankees. What's interesting is, on these cards, they were known as the Yankees. It's right there on the front of the card. And this was 1911 when these were made, when they were officially known as the Highlanders. So it was interesting that, they printed that on the front of these cards, and eventually, they were known only as the Yankees. So somebody was either had a time machine, maybe saw the future, or maybe they were just New York Highlander fans, you know, some of the creators of these cards, and decided to put that on there. And this is Piedmont Factory 25, off-center back. So, you know, if you're building this set and you want to take your time, definitely search out nice centered cards with nice metallic gold borders. And, you know, with a little bit of searching, you can probably find them at not much more money than you would, say, an off-centered one that doesn't have the metallic borders. And this is American Beauty with the black ink. Another one, and as you can see, it's not real metallic-y. It's just a basic gold border, non-metallic American Beauty, black ink. J.D. Miller. I think you know, this one here you can see a lot of the metallic in the edges. J.D. Miller, I believe, has some variations. They're very hard to see, you know, in scans. Most of them, you know, being that first line in there where it has his name. There's some will say that his middle initial is a B on there. Some will say it's a D. You know, there's variation collectors out there that search those out. Me and myself, not being a huge T205 collector, it's not as important to me. You know, I picked this card up because it was a Piedmont Factory 42, and Piedmont Factory 42s in the T206 set are, you know, one of the more hard to get card backs, and you know, when you can find them in the T205s at a much lesser price, it's hard not to add a few to your collection. This here, nice metallic gold borders. Sorry about the glare, but it's the only way I can show you that metallic finish. And another PSA 4 American Beauty Green Factory 42. Not as metallic. You can see it's, you know, it's in spots, but it's not really the whole card. So like I said, if I was collecting these cards, you know, I would definitely put the metallic gold border and the centering at the top of my list, in front of everything else. And this is American Beauty Greenback. And here we got a Hal Chase, PSA 4. This card here has a couple variations with the line around the frame. One has it, one doesn't. And then he has another card where it's more of a side pose than, you know, facing forward pose. So, you know, there's still a lot of different ways to collect this particular set, which, you know, makes this, you know, a fun option. This here is a Cycle Cigarettes back. Like I said, I try to keep away from the real common ones just because I don't collect these too much, but if I'm going to have a few, I'd like to have some of the more difficult ones. And another PSA 4. As you can see, the chipping in the corners, it just really takes away from the card. You know, if you had that in the T206 card, you probably wouldn't even see it. You know, would still be taken into consideration with grading on a T206, but it's just not as noticeable. You know, on the T205s, it's very noticeable. This here's a polar bear back. Now, the polar bear, if you didn't know, it's a scrap tobacco. So these cards were literally, in these bags with the loose tobacco, and that's why it has all these tobacco stains on the back of the card. These cards with the polar bear back are very difficult to find without those stains. And if you can find them, it's definitely a good find. I would definitely take one without the stain over with it, just because of rarity. And this one's got somewhat of a metallic border. Yeah, you can see it. It's just that glare from the light is unfortunate. Yeah, Lewis Evans, PSA 4. Not too bad of a looking card. I just wish I didn't have that glare. This is a cycle back. As you can see with PSA, some of these cards they use some sort of a weird plastic type bag in the sealing process, and in other ones they don't. As in like the previous one that I've showed you, you don't have that wrinkly look. And it's been a complaint with many of the T205 and T206 collectors, just because it just doesn't look as good. And you basically have two layers. You've got the plastic, and then you have the inner layer that's all wavy. And PSA's response to that was that it stopped the card from moving around in their holder, which I can kind of understand. The last thing you want to do is have it graded and then it's damaged while in the holder. But you'd have to really be moving these things around rough to get that much damage happening without that bag in there. I've also seen some of these where they've put them in cases that were meant for a different size card, but then use the same type of bag inside that would just kind of keep the card in place. And honestly, those just look completely awful. I've got a few in my collection of T206s I'll have to show you guys at some point. I believe this card also has a variation, something with his initials on the front of the card. But like I said, I'm not a big T205 collector, so there may be other people out there that are more of an expert off the top of the head than I am on these cards. Another PSA 4. This card here, decently centered, nice metallic borders. If I was collecting this set, this is what I'd be looking for. There's very little white marks on the corners. There's nothing white on the edges, for the chipping. Borders are metallic, and it's nicely centered, top to bottom and side to side. And this is just a basic Piedmont Factory 25 back, and I probably bought this card because of the centering and the color in the front at the time. I don't think I paid $75 for it though. I probably spent more, around $50 for it. Like I said, I very rarely would I overpay on any of these cards. You wait long enough or search hard enough, you will find the right card for your set at the right price. This one here's got some ink on the back, probably from like a wet sheet transfer, which is basically when these sheets are laid down one on top of another, the ink on the top of one isn't completely dry and it transfers to the back of the next sheet. So, you know, that pattern there can actually, with a little bit of time, probably be matched up to another card. There's another New York Yankees. You can see on the top it's got the chipping, which is, you know, it's unfortunate, but it just comes with collecting this set. Something that you either have to accept, or, you know, you wait it, you know, for the right card to come along. Like I said, these cards, I just pick them up if they're priced right. Another PSA 4. This one's got some centering issues, but nice metallic borders. Big difference when they're metallic looking. And this here is an Honest Long Cut advertisement on the back. Not a difficult back in this set. It's one of the more common ones. Another Hall of Famer, Zach Wheat. As you can see on the edge of the card, it's got some color loss there, some chipping, and that's just one of the difficulties with this set. And this is a Piedmont Factory 42. Another card, not as much metallic look to it, off center, PSA 4, but it does have the American Beauty green back on it, and that's, you know, most likely why I made the purchase on this card. If it was a basic card back, you know, it would have to be literally half of the value, you know, for me to purchase it. You know, if I'm buying one of these in a PSA 4 for $30 with a common back, and it's a little off center and not as, you know, metallic looking, you know, I'll definitely, you know, pick it up. Otherwise, yeah, just, you know, probably pass on it. George Rucker. Pretty common back. You know, not any of the sweet corporal backs are more difficult than the others, you know, in my opinion. You know, maybe a little bit, but not enough to, you know, make a difference really in price. Piedmont Factory 25. Tom Jones, PSA 4, Factory 25. So in a case like that card, I probably picked it up at a pretty good price. Got Fred Beck, nice metallic borders, fairly centered. A little bit of white on the bottom corners. And it's a polar bear back, so you can see the tobacco stains on the back of this card. Harry McIntyre. Just overall nice color card. You know, the shades of red in this card, you know, kind of make it pop. You know, these cards also, you know, people will collect these cards also in team sets. The Cubs set is, you know, a very popular set, along with New York Islanders, to collect. Probably two of the most popular team sets to collect in the vintage T205 and T206 set. This is a factory 25. One thing you can find on these cards, you know, when searching online, looking through eBay auctions and pictures, a lot of times they will not list what factory number they are, and then you have to contact the seller. A little tip on these, the factory 42 backs, the factory line is about the same length of the words on the bottom where it says "of quality." So if you can't make out the number by the scan, you can usually make out the length of the factory line. And if it's the shorter of the two, then you know it's a factory 42. If it's longer, then you know it's a factory 25. The same goes for the T206s. You can do the same thing, except the only difference is it would work the opposite way. The factory 42 line on the T206s is longer than the factory 25 line. So just a little tip there. Sometimes you can, you know, find a hidden gem, you know, for sale, and you can usually pick the card up pretty quickly because you don't have to ask a, you know, a simple question as far as what the factory number is. Another PSA 4, pretty common back there. You know, I'll usually pick these up, you know, the common backs, the common front player. You know, if I can pick them up for 35 or 40 bucks for a PSA 4, you know, and that's with the shipping included, I'll usually do it. I haven't picked up any of these lately, though. Like I said, the T206 set just, you know, keeps me busy enough. Another PSA 4 Jimmy Austin. Probably picked this up because it's the Yankees, and polar bear back, you know, not a rare back, but it's a fun back to collect. So there are, you know, back collectors, you know, for the T205 set as well, you know, where you just, you know, collect the players with the polar bear backs. And this is the last of the PSAs in my collection. Another PSA 4. This is in one of the newer, well, not completely new. It's not what they have currently, but when they switched over to a little bit of a thicker case. So this is probably one of my most recent purchases. And this one here has got the red ink back on this one. Now for the SGCs, you know, a lot of people like the SGC cases because they have the black insert. To me, it's probably, I don't know if it's as important as, you know, you can't really tell. You know, it's like the T206s, you can tell a lot because they're a white border. But on T205 is probably not as much of a big deal. You know, it's just not as much of a contrast between the black and white. You know, this you're just dealing with the black and the gold. So, you know, the only reason why I picked up some SGCs is just because of the card front back combinations, and, you know, like this one is nicely centered. It's got some can't really tell the metallic on these on the cases. It's like the plastic is a little bit thicker, but it's centered nicely. It's a Yankees, and it's a Piedmont Factory 42. You know, that's mainly why I picked it up in you know, SGC. When I buy T206s, it doesn't matter to me if they're SGC or PSA. At some point, they'll, you know, eventually all get crossed over to one or the other. But these here, you know, just mainly the grade and, you know, the card front back combination, you know, why I had made the purchase. This is another Piedmont 42. Piedmont Factory 42, off center back. And this one's one of the slightly newer SGCs. It's not like the funny looking ones they have now. But I picked this up because it's a, it says on the SGCs they actually put in their population reports the different card backs. PSA is refusing to do that for the T205 set. Not really sure why. At this point we all we know of all the different front back type, or not front back combinations, but we know of all the different card backs, and there's no reason why they shouldn't start listing them. When they did the T206s, they did it in steps, which it just made it the population reports a mess. Where they first just graded it as only a T206 regardless of what back it was, and then then they decided to add the card back but not the factory number and subject number. So it just now they do everything, but now I'm just waiting for them to try to step up their game with their the registry for that set. This card here is my only T205 in a lower grade, so you guys can get a look at what a lower grade card looks like. This is SGC 10, equivalent to like a PSA 1. And the only reason, like I said, why I picked this up is just the Hal Chase Yankees card. And it's got a little more difficult American Beauty back. And when I bought this, I think I only paid like $30 or $35 for it. I didn't pay much, and that's really the only reason why I grabbed it. It really doesn't fit into my collection well, just because of the difference in grade. But for the money, I wasn't going to pass up a deal like that. And that's what all I got to show you as far as the T205s. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about the set, you can always leave me comments. I always try to get back to you. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And if you like the video, please like the video. Thanks for watching.